and she was lying there on the bed in a lot of pain. And then suddenly she just screams, "Get out of the room!" And I'm completely stunned. I'm sitting on the sofa wondering what's happening, because this is the most important day of my life. My wife is about to deliver.
Welcome to Popsinapod. Hi, this is Peter Pop.
And I'm Nadir Pop.
For those of you confused, wondering why you're listening to this, if you've stumbled on this episode, what's going on exactly here, who the hell we are, I suggest you just take a step back and listen to episode 0, where we talk about who we are, what the hell we're doing, why we're even recording this podcast.
And just to summarize this entire podcast in one line, we're two regular dads trying to make a difference in the dad community and just trying to say how much fun parenting is from a dad's perspective, of course.
On this episode, we're going to tell you stories about the biggest days in our life as yet. I'm sure all you dads have a big smile on your face and know exactly what I'm talking about. Nadir, one of the things I really enjoyed on your blog, New Age Dad, was just the personal stories that you had. Some of them funny, some of them serious. But one story I'll never forget is the one about the chicken roll.
The chicken roll story, Peter, man. I don't even know how to kind of get rid of that mark, because everyone who reads the blog sort of remembers only the chicken roll story. And trust me, it's much more than that. So when we reached the hospital, my wife, Sabiha, was obviously in labor, and we got the room, we settled in and everything. And I think an hour or so later, I got hungry, right? Come on, it's fine. And it was at that point that I was deciding that should I go out and get dinner and come back to the hospital, or should I just go and sit somewhere and then eat? So then I decided, no, I think it's better that I get the dinner and sit over here in the hospital, just in case if something happens and they require me or whatever it is. Now, it's a small setup, right? It's a very small setup. I can't eat a chicken roll in the reception area because I'm just going to stink up the entire reception place. So I said, okay, let me just go to my room and sit there. So I go to my room. My wife is in pain. She's, a little uncomfortable because she's dilated about anywhere between 3 to 4 centimeters. So she's clearly in a lot of pain, and she decided not to take the epidural. So that's why the agonizing pain that she was in. I go settle myself, wrap open that roll as if I'm in some advert of some chicken roll, and I start eating, and I'm just eating, and suddenly, the wife is screaming, "Get out of the room! I don't want to smell any chicken!" And I'm just sitting there, stunned, and I'm like, oh my God, what the hell did I do? Should I do something? And I just kind of stopped eating midway. And suddenly a nurse just runs in because she thinks I'm, beating up my wife or something. And she comes and she's looking at my wife and like, oh, wait, don't worry, it's okay. And she starts like rubbing her back just to kind of ease her, back, and just soothe her. And I was like, what should I do? Should I just like go and, rub my wife's back as well? Because I want to be there. I don't want to do something for my wife. I'm there sitting in the hospital and like, how can I be of help? Can I do something? And obviously not. The nurse just said, please bahar jaiye. You must leave the room. That's what she told me. And I was like, okay, if that's what I can do to help my wife, then great, I'll just leave the room. But you know what, Peter? The important part over here is that...
Wait, that you finished the chicken roll, right?
No, Peter, you're not listening to the story. This has nothing to do with the chicken roll. This is about my beautiful, loving wife and how I was there to support her all the time. Forget the chicken roll. My wife was in a lot of pain, and I was there to help her, to support her, so that she could deliver a beautiful baby.
Nadir, that story actually sounds quite anticlimactical. But you know what's great? Is that at least you were there to witness the birth of your daughter.
Yeah, of course I was there. Wait, hang on. What are you trying to say?
Well, let me introduce you to my chicken roll story.
Ooh, this is fun.
So, the thing is, while I was at the hospital with my wife, I wasn't really there for the birth. One of the things my wife Karen and I discussed throughout her pregnancy was how excited we were about being parents and how she wanted me to be there in the delivery room.
So you were not there. You were physically not there.
Yeah, let me get to that, man. So we were quite excited, get into the hospital. On the day her water breaks, We're kind of in the hospital. Everything's going as clocked. The nurses keep checking in there and stuff like that. The routine. Everyone who's kind of been through the experience knows what I'm talking about. Time to time checking in there and stuff like that. And then at a certain point, we knew it was time. I go to the nurse and I say, okay, I think it's time we call the doctor. She says, sure, okay. Doctor's on her way. And at this point, just like you, I was like, okay, I'm the dad now. I need to get my game face on. We've been talking about over a month or two about this moment, even more months preparing myself for it. So I go to her and I say, okay, so when do I get into the delivery room? What do I need to do? She just looks at me like matter of fact saying, have you done the course?
Wait, what course?
That's the exact reaction I had. And I said, what course are you talking about? And she says, sir, there's a course that you need to do. And I said, this is the first I'm hearing of it. So then I vary between going from, pleading, this is my first child, blah, 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 to, saying, okay, what do I do? And then finally I just resigned to the fact that, I'm not going to be there. So I'm sitting in the room waiting, wondering what's going on in the delivery room, literally having FOMO, man. And soon after my wife goes into the delivery room, I'd say approximately like half an hour later, the doctor comes out and she goes, where is everyone? Why aren't you all waiting?
So I say, the doctor was expecting you in the room.
Yeah. And I said, okay. And in that mind, I'm wondering, okay, she's out. So has the baby out as yet? And she says, hey, congratulations, you're father to a son. And I'm like, wow, this elation. Fast forward to, she gives my son into my arms. I'm looking at to him, beaming with pride. And then she looks at me into the eye and says, why didn't you come in? And I go, wait, I was allowed inside, the course. And she says, what course? I told them to call you inside.
Shut up. That's so sad, man. So you didn't get to see the birth of your son while the doctors inside who were delivering were expecting you inside the room.
Yeah. And till this date, it's a mystery as to what exactly transpired in that half an hour, 45 minutes or so. But yeah, there you go.
Well, at least your son's out and all hale and hearty and all of that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I completely, the moment I looked at him and I said his name and he kind of gave me a little smile, I guess, I just forgot all of that in that very instance.
That's it. That's the whole point. I kind of feel bad for you, Peter, but then at the same time, I feel happy because your son was all, hale and hearty, all good. Wife was good, everything fine, right? So yeah, so then that's good. But in my case, so my delivery, Sabia's delivery, my wife's delivery it feels like a blur, right? So throughout the hospital bit, when we reached there, the doctor wasn't there. She was out partying somewhere. And she came sort of late in the night because that's when, I think Sabia was proper dilated 10 centimeters and everything. So she came in all hello, everything's fine. Don't worry. I'll do a good job. Blah, blah. And when you look at her, you kind of trust her. I said, yeah, she's going to do it. Right. And then they took her to the OT. They settled her in. I couldn't go there because I think they were just setting up certain things. And I was like, what do I do? Can I do something? It's like, here, take your scrubs and, just wear this and then come inside. I was like, oh, great. And I kind of felt like a doctor. Obviously, I couldn't do much. And at the same time, I was coordinating with my parents because we were alone. So me and Sabia were alone in the hospital. There was nobody with us. It's just the two of us. So I'm coordinating with my parents and my in-laws. And we are just trying to figure out, okay, where's the hospital? And, come here, park there, all of that. And then suddenly one nurse just, runs out of the OT and says, you're required, quickly, just come in. And at that point, you're thinking, what something's gone wrong, right? That's the first thing you're thinking. Something went wrong. And they're like, just quickly come in. And I just run in. And everything seems fine. Sabia's sort of pushing. And I was like, oh, great. So now we have some time. I can probably position myself and, I'll just kind of try and figure out what's going on. And I kid you not, Peter, within, I think, a minute, my daughter was out. Wow. Within a minute, it was just done. I was like, that's it? It's over? What about all that drama? Wasn't I supposed to say, come on, push, Sabia, push, do it? You get nothing, man, nothing.
I think that's the thing about probably popular culture and stuff like that, is that they set up those expectations so high for you that when you're actually there, you're like, I mean, of course, when the dad's talking, I'm sure the moms differ on that.
Clearly, all respect and everything goes to the mother over here. But yeah, I mean, popular culture, right? They kind of ruin it for you. Like twice in the same story, two anticlimax situation for me, right? So anyway, daughter's out, and at the same time, I'm just like, I get her in my arms, and everything's forgotten, Peter. Just like you, right? When you said that whole anxiety about the course and everything, it's all out the window for me as well. Everything was forgotten. When I held her in my arms, I was just like, that's it. This is it. I made that, right? And it was at that moment I was like, oh my God, I'm a father. It sinks in, right? It sinks in then at that point that yes, this is it. We have to take care of this child for the rest of our lives, right? So it's a bit of a bittersweet kind of a situation. I don't know. I mean,
It's true, because like I had that same feeling where you suddenly hold that 2-3 kg being in your arm, and it kind of dawns at you that, okay, you were 2 of you, now you're 3 of you, and for the next 18 years this third person is going to be dependent on you.
Precisely. And I think in my head also, the reason why everything went off so smoothly is because we had sort of planned everything in advance, like way in advance. I'm sure even you must have done it too. So for us, I think the biggest hurdle was that the hospital was 15 kilometers away from my house. Precisely. Nobody expected that. But then for me, it's very important that my wife is very comfortable with the doctor, and if the doctor says that she's going to operate in a particular hospital, even if it's far from my home, I'm okay with that. As long as the doctor and my wife have that comfort level between themselves, that is it. So we really planned everything out. Like I used to do routes, in the car, taking different routes, figuring out which is the easiest one on the day of the delivery. So I kind of was doing that. So for me, it was extremely important that you kind of dot your I's and cross your T's. That is the kind of planning that we did. I don't know about you, Peter, but we were really planned with our approach when it came to the delivery of our child.
So I have a slightly better story for you on this count. One of the things actually my wife and I discovered very early while we were dating, I think probably in the first few months. So my wife grew up in South Bombay, Marine Lines. So we kind of rib each other about, suburban nights and South Bombay and stuff like that. So my wife was like, oh yeah, what do you know? Like I grew up in South Bombay. So I looked at her and said, what are you talking about? I was born in South Bombay.
Oh, nice.
And she said, what? Why? Which hospital? And at that moment, we discovered that both of us were born a year apart or so in the same hospital.
No way. Are you serious? You're not born the same. So, and you all had no knowledge of this while you.
So this is while we were dating. So for those of you who are from Bombay, St. Elizabeth's home in South Bombay, yeah, that's where we were, closer to Valkeshwar, for those looking for specifics. But so, we were discovering, just like you, we were also exploring the various options. I think we had discussed this also when we first met about hospitals and stuff like that. So our doctor had like 3 or 4 hospitals that she normally did her deliveries at. So we did our usual routine, went to one, went to two, didn't like one, liked some things about the other. Then you have the option of the budget. And then we went into the hospital that we both were born. And it just clicked. And we said, of course, I mean, this is kind of like coincidental, but if we have the opportunity, and I'm sure this is a great story we're going to tell our son when he grows up, is that all 3 of us were born in the same hospital.
I think it's fate, I don't know about coincidence. I think it's a beautiful fate that you out of nowhere meet your then girlfriend, now wife, and then this is something that is so like beautifully common. And then what are the chances of your son also being born in the same hospital?
Yeah.
I think it's a lovely
and that
story.
was one of the things I remember telling the nurses. They were like beaming with joy. But yeah, man. So of course, just to add to your point, sometimes planning for things like this also make not only great experiences, but also great memories.
I completely agree. That's such a lovely story, man, Peter. And I think that's precisely why we connected so well on this level, because both of us had our personal journeys and the kind of experiences that we've had as far as the delivery of a child is concerned.
We both kind of had our own chicken roll stories.
Yeah, man, we did. Though my chicken roll story, I think, was a little, it's not that serious. Come on.
So, Nadir, if you have to kind of put a wrap to this episode, give our listeners a few key takeaways, what would you say?
Okay, so the first takeaway for me, Peter, would be the comfort with the doctor, right? So your wife has to be very comfortable with the doctor, and I think that's precisely why the hospital that we chose, which was about 15 kilometers away, we made that decision. Because I didn't want that rapport to get affected in any way. If your wife is comfortable with the doctor, just go with it, because ultimately she's the one delivering the kid and not you. What about you, Peter? Do you have any certain takeaways that you want to do? You want to say?
Wow. So I would definitely agree with the rapport, because again, the doctor my wife selected, and I think it's better if men don't have a say in such things, to be honest. It's better that you just play that supporting role in there. One thing I'd like to add is do a dry run to the hospital. Even though I chose a hospital which is about 4 or 5 kilometers away, my wife and I did so I don't drive, taking public transport, so having access to, like, say, a car, Uber, stuff like that is important, but also trying it at different times of the day. So, because, it can happen anytime, the delivery.
I
You can't
completely
kind of
agree,
predict
Peter,
this.
because I actually did that. So I did that, and considering the fact that I had to travel so far from home, my wife and I did those dry runs at different times of the day, morning, evening, while she was in the car, because I think that's most important, right? You drive like a maniac when there's nothing possibly that could go wrong, but then now that you have a pregnant wife, you have to be very, very careful. So yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, what about like something more crucial, Peter? Do you think there's something
yes,
very
I know.
crucial that you want to tell our listeners?
I know where you're going with this. The course. If there's anything that you remember what I say from this episode, it should be the course. Check if the hospital has a course that dads need to do to be in the delivery room. If they do it early as possible. If they don't, be glad they don't.
I think that's a very, very important point, Peter, because trust me, up till this point, I had no idea about even the existence of a course, because for me it was a given, right? Ki, yaar, the fathers can definitely go inside the delivery room to see the birth, to witness the birth of their children. Till I met you, I had no idea that a course like this exists, where a father has to do a course just so that he can witness the birth of his child. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point that you brought up.
And I think, to summarize, the last and most important fourth point should be being patient. Coming from me as somebody who, during my adolescence and 20s, was a bit, impatient, angry at times, losing my cool. After I met my wife, Karen, kind of calmed down. That's when I kind of knew that, taking an important step like being a dad, I really felt it. And, being patient with your wife was one of the most important things, I feel. And anybody listening out there, this is something you really need to do.
No, absolutely. I think you've got it, you've got your finger on it, Peter. Patience is such an important virtue, especially in this delicate moment, because these 9-10 months, right, is all about your wife, correct? She's carrying a child, she's about to give birth to a child, and if you lose your cool, then things can go pretty bad. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up. Patience is very, very important. You have to be patient with your wife. She is going to go through a lot of emotional roller coaster ride, so you just have to be there playing the supporting role and kind of just take it. It's all right. Don't react. And for me, I think that's important. But Peter, I'm glad we kind of did this, and I think it's a great journey that we had in the first episode, and I genuinely hope that even our listeners had as much fun as we had narrating these stories.
And if you've listened to these 20 odd minutes all the way to the end, to this point, why don't you send us some feedback, even if it's just to tell us your chicken roll story, or if you're a mom out there just laughing at us, hit us up at popsinapod@gmail.com.
Or you can just follow us on Instagram and Facebook, search for Pops in a Pod, and we'll be right there. A follow would definitely help. Thank you so much, guys.
So yeah, until next time, here's Peter Pop
And Nadir Pop.
signing off.
See you in the next episode.